Hi there, it's Tara, she of all things transformational guidance coaching, transformational bodywork, and for our purposes here today, transformational yoga. So this is kind of a part 2 video. Last week I put up a video about demystifying Adho Mukha Svanasana, or downward facing dog. And I just wanted to come back and circle back to the importance of why we want to practice poses in a way that is consistent with the technology of the pose as intended and safe for the body, and in a way that could even actually help us heal things about the body. So I'm going to read a yoga sutra here. If you don't know what the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras are, Patanjali was a great sage, we don't know how many thousands of years ago, who put down what's called Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And these sutras actually are sort of like if you really break it down, they're kind of like a bullet point list of here's why we do yoga, here's the problems with being a person, and here's how yoga can help, and then here's what is important to consider when practicing yoga. And eventually the sutras kind of get into some of the more mystical effects that we can bring into our lives with yoga. But the first couple chapters are very practical. They're like, look, here's the problem with being a person. It's pretty basic. And here's how yoga can help you manage and mitigate that. So the sutra I'm reading today is Sutra 1 in the first chapter, point 8. I'm going to read it from two different interpretations. The first one is from Edwin Bryant. He's a very well-known yoga philosopher. And his interpretation says, error is the false knowledge stemming from the incorrect apprehension of something. And then this other interpretation from Nischala Joy Devi says, misunderstanding comes when perception is unclear and tinted. So misunderstanding is the second ray of consciousness. And it's a common, as she says, a common fluctuation that could cause us a great deal of unpleasantness. I mean, I think this is pretty obvious, right? How many times in your day do you have some kind of misunderstanding in the world that causes some kind of suffering? And that's just maybe, counting interactions. But then there's the misunderstanding over the course of a lifetime. There's misunderstanding, and this is what I feel really compelled about, misunderstanding the body and the way the mechanics of our bodies work, kind of generally, and then also the specific mechanics of your own body. The misunderstanding from being conditioned by our culture to think that we are supposed to carry on our lives in certain particular ways, or we're supposed to do things one way to get a certain kind of effect. These are all a level of misunderstanding because we all have our own little locks that need to be kind of decoded from day to day and throughout the course of our lifetime so that we can discern what's appropriate for each of us. And there's many ways to I'll say re-educate, because I don't think that we're born conditioned with misunderstanding. I think it gets conditioned into us. We lose our intrinsic sense of self, high capital S self, and also L lowercase l self, which is just the self that is navigating life every day. So as we lose that by coming into the world, we lose our ability to in-source what is best for us. And that's where a lot of the misunderstanding comes. And so yoga is this amazing form of physical and energetic, and yeah, spiritual too, practice that helps us come back to an understanding of ourselves and also the world. So to bring this back to a pose, specifically today, downward facing dog pose, why is it important? Because when we have misunderstanding, we create karma in our lives. So as I think I mentioned in my previous video, I did downward facing dog incorrectly for about 10 years. I also simultaneously had shoulder pathology that was pretty painful for a good part of that chunk of time. And I did not know that the pathology in my shoulders, both shoulders, was correlated to how I was doing the downward dog, because I was unaware of how my anatomy should be working. And I was unaware of how the pose should be done. And I know this is very unpopular in today's culture to say that there's a right and wrong way to do poses. Yeah, there's a little bit of both and. There are access roads into doing the poses in a way that produces positive karma in your body that may be unique to you. You still maybe have to find that lock, but also honoring a general anatomical relationship that most of us have. I mean, everybody's got some different things, and there are, of course, people whose bodies are very different due to, maybe they were born with some kind of anatomical difference in their body, a congenital birth difference that's a little bit of an anomaly, and maybe there was an injury or something like that. I understand, but generally speaking, right? So we should generally understand how the body works, and then specifically understand how our body is working and what's happened in it so far that maybe we need to account for when we try to do our poses, our practices in our life. Because the instant karma of a yoga practice is how you feel immediately, but the long-term karma is how it affects your body, mind, and spirit over time. And you may not know that there's a correlation between how you're feeling long-term and how you're practicing on a day-to-day basis if you're unaware of what's going on with your particular body, your particular mind, etc. So I am very, very dedicated to personally uncovering those blind spots of my own and really educating people in how they can optimize their understanding of their own body, bodies in general, their own mind, and how we have, propensities towards certain things, and what possibilities we could latch onto if we only knew that we could and how. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is how to, slide into that potential of downward facing dog. Okay, so if you watched last week's video, we went through many different ways that you could practice downward dog, from a wall to a chair, using blocks on the floor, etc. So today I'm going to recap a couple of those, and I'm also going to do one pose to help us warm the body up for the downward dog pose. So what you need today is you need a strap, or bathrobe belt or dog leash or something like that will work, and it would be nice if you have a chair. And we're going to start lying on our back, supine, using the strap. And by the way, if you have any kind of neck issues, if you tend to hyperextend your neck, or if your neck is just a little uncomfortable, or you just don't want your head on a hard surface, I recommend putting a firm folded blanket under your head, or kind of a firm, not too thick, like just a little kind of pillow. So the first pose that we're going to do today is called Supta Padangusthasana, and you're going to use your belt. You can have your belt or whatever you're using just opened up nice and wide. We'll come on to our backs. And you're going to bring the belt to the arch of the left foot. And just hold the ends of the belt so that your elbows are able to rest on the floor. So hopefully, you know, I'm using an 8-foot belt. The 6-foot belts, you may have to have the arms a little lifted. And, but it's nice if the elbows can be down because it enables us to keep the chest open. So the two, well, there's a few, but the two main points of this pose that I want you to really honor, if you can, is that both legs should be in full extension. Extension means that they are straightened at the knees. And then the other piece that I'd like you to honor is that you should have a little bit of space underneath your low back. That's the lumbar curve. The lumbar curve is a concave curve, and this pose should enable you, the way you do this pose should enable that concave curve to stay concave. So if you feel your low back pressing into the floor, then I'd like you to let the angle of your raised left leg out a little bit. Now, we're striving to open up the back of the left thigh. So I'd like you to draw the left leg, you know, over to a point of verticality that enables you to feel a mild stretch in the back of the left thigh. For you, that might be something like this. Could be 45 degrees. Could be, you know, maybe 70 degrees. Could be about 90 degrees. Some people will have it, you know, a little past 90. And then the other leg, if you pick up your head and you look at your right foot and leg, those toes should be pointed straight up and there should be good energy in your right foot and really reaching out through that right heel. Whereas the left foot, if you could please push up through the ball of the left foot so the front of that ankle lengthens. And we're just going to find the angle that enables you to have that sustainable stretch that you are hopefully breathing deeply into. Slow inhale and a slow exhale. So for folks who are very, very flexible, you may actually even have the ability to hold the toe. But we would like to kind of keep that shoulder blade down and as best as you can have a little bit of space underneath the lumbar spine. So wherever you were for this pose, when you feel ready, you can exhale and let that left leg gently down to the floor. And I think it's very valuable to take a second. Exhale 1 or 2 times and feel the effect, that's the instant karma, in your left leg. And then when you're ready, you can take that right leg up. And the angle of your right leg might very well be different than the angle of your left leg. So don't get too caught up in making the two legs do exactly the same thing. More so get caught up in finding what's the right formula for this side. So I'm going to make sure that I've got lots of energy reaching out through my left heel. Left leg is really rooting and grounding. And I'm going to press up through the ball of the right foot. And I'm going to encourage you to do as I am doing, to find the correct angle for your leg, to find a mild, sustainable stretch in the back of your right thigh and those hamstrings. We're going to press up through the ball of that right foot so the front of the right ankle lengthens. We're going to all make sure that we have a little bit of space underneath our low back. So the low back has a little loftiness, and you can breathe deeply here. So bring the breath in very fully. Exhale slowly, and make sure with each exhale that your body's not losing the points of the pose. I don't know about your body, but my body likes to sneak off and kind of check out when it can. It wants to, you know, oh, she won't notice that my little toe is kind of falling out, or, softening the quadricep. No, we want to stay present in the whole body. The whole body does the pose. So when you feel like you've done it evenly on both sides, you can let this leg come down as well and release. And so one more time, we're going to go up with the left leg and the right leg. And you're going to have them both at an angle that allows you to keep your shoulder blades on the floor and gives you a little bit of that pocket of space underneath your low back. And I want you to feel, if you kind of swing your legs forward and back a little bit, I want you to feel how the leg bones, the femurs, are moving in the hip sockets. You're not lifting your hips to do it. You're keeping the hips stable and the thighs are moving in the sockets. So the trunk from your tailbone and your pelvic bones up to your head is more or less basically unmoving, and the legs are what are moving in the sockets. So you can think about this would be what it would be like if a Lego figurine or a Barbie doll was laying on its back and we move the legs up towards the ceiling. Okay? And then we're going to apply this into the downward dog. So you can let the legs down. We'll put that strap aside. You can roll off to your side and come on up to standing. And here's where we're going to grab that chair, please. Okay, so you'll have the chair at one end of the mat. And we did this last week. We're just going to do it again so that we can kind of keep the posture of the body familiar in our mind as we transition into the dog pose. So I'm going to face the chair with my feet parallel, little space between the legs, and I'm going to bring my arms up overhead. And from here, with the arms up overhead, I'll bring a little weight to my heels. I'm going to widen the hands enough that I can slide the shoulder blades down the back a bit. I'm going to lift the chest a little bit just to kind of really bring that sense of tone to my back so I become aware of my body's ability to tone the back. And then we're going to exhale, and you're going to start to bend the knees, and the fanny is going to go back, and your hands are going to come to the chair back. And from there, you'll walk your feet into a position that allows you to have a little bit of a kind of a lengthening sensation through the armpits and the sides of your rib cage. Bending the knees, scooping the hips up and back, and doing your best to stay long from your hands to your tailbone. You don't need to lift the head to look up to the chair back, but also maybe don't drop it here. Just kind of keep the head more or less even with the arms. And the wider your chair back, the more you have the ability to widen the hands if that helps take some pressure off of the neck. From here, you're going to externally rotate the upper arms, which means you're going to do your best to turn the soft part of the elbows to face up towards the ceiling. They may not do that. They probably won't. But at least we're going to initiate that external rotation in the humerus upper arm bones. You're going to imagine that you've got a friend kind of pulling your hips back so you feel the lengthening through the spine and the rib cage. This is an excellent variation of downward dog. It's really great to do. You know where this is great to do is on the edge of a kitchen sink, because the counters are a nice height and you can cup your hands inside the sink. Bend your knees, press the feet into the floor, exhale, come on up to standing, and then you can bring the arms down into Tadasana and just digest that sensation for a breath or two. Take a Couple breaths. Exhale. Release. And then we'll get rid of the chair. Unless for you, the chair is the best choice, in which case you should just use the chair. There's no gold star for being on the floor, you know, or closer to the floor, or closer to whatever we think the final pose is. The gold star comes when you do the pose in a way that's best for your body. So if the chair is best for your body, please use it for now. But for those of us who have the potential to do the pose more traditionally, we're going to come onto hands and knees. You're going to take your hands and you're going to make suction cups out of your hands. So you're going to spread those fingers as far apart as you can. And in fact, let me show you the front view here. When I come down for this pose, I also widen my hands a little bit and I turn them out so that I can practice externally rotating your arms. So if you want to, you can just come to your hands and knees, take that position with the hands, spreading the fingers, turning them slightly out and widening them a little bit more than the shoulders perhaps, and then practice externally rotating the upper arms, meaning you're going to turn the soft part of the elbows to face forward. And then from there, you'll scoot your knees a little bit back so the wrists are ahead of the shoulders, knees are behind the hips. You're going to grab the mat with your toes. Exhale, lift the hips up and back. Scoop, 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 scoop those hips up and back so that you get excellent length from the wrists all the way up to the hips. Here, feel free to please let your head dangle. Please keep the knees deeply bent so that you can do that scooping action. Really scoop, 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 scoop. And then if you are a flexible person, perhaps you see about straightening the legs, but we're not going to straighten the legs if it means that the spine starts to round like a beach ball. We want the spine to stay really, really long, just like it was when we were reaching overhead, standing up. So the sensation in the back and the position of the arm should be more or less the same as when we stood up and reached overhead. So I am imagining here that I have an animal tail that's reaching up and back. So whether you have the heels lifted and the knees bent or the heels down, and you can see my heels aren't even reaching the floor. Some days they do and some days they don't. I don't get attached to that experience. What I am interested in is creating the length in the spine and an open front body. So if you haven't already, you can externally rotate the upper arms a little bit in the sockets. Doing your best to turn the soft part of the elbow up towards the ceiling. It may or may not go there. I know that this is a lot of work. I'm aware. I'm doing the work. But this is the right work for bringing stability and safety into these, into our shoulders that are a very mobile joint. And eventually, of course, we might, we're toning the legs, but we also might eventually open the back of the heels and the hamstrings. So after you're cooked here, you can exhale and slowly lower the knees. And you might choose to rest into a child's pose. Or sometimes I really like to just kneel after I've done that and let my body feel into what's just happened. And so while you take a few deep, deep breaths in whatever resting position you're choosing right now, I'm going to read to you some of the amazing benefits of downward facing dog. So let me grab Light on Yoga by BKS Iyengar. This is sort of, we in the yoga world, especially in the Iyengar lineage, kind of refer to this as the Bible of yoga poses. So, Mr. Iyengar states that the effects of Adho Mukha Svanasana are When one is exhausted, a longer stay in this pose removes fatigue and brings back the lost energy. Prana. The pose is especially good for runners who get tired after a hard race. Sprinters will develop speed and lightness in the legs. The pose relieves pain and stiffness of the heels, and it helps to soften calcaneal spurs, meaning this is going to be good for plantar fasciitis. It strengthens the ankles and makes the legs shapely. The practice of this asana pose helps to eradicate stiffness in the region of the shoulder blades, and arthritis of the shoulder joints is relieved. The abdominal muscles are drawn towards the spine and strengthened. As the diaphragm is lifted to the chest cavity, the rate of the heartbeat is also slowed down. But nevertheless, this is an exhilarating pose. If you're not quite up for doing headstand, Shirshasana, you can practice this pose as your inversion. Because the trunk is lowered in this asana and the healthy blood is brought to the region of the trunk without any strain on the heart. This pose rejuvenates the brain cells and it invigorates the brain by removing fatigue, and it is safe for people with high blood pressure. Of course, if you have high blood pressure and you feel it isn't safe, please discontinue. But traditionally, this pose is considered a-okay for that. So I hope that you got something out of this, and not only for the pose itself, but I also hope that you are gaining an understanding of how we choose for ourselves, whether it is in yoga or in life, has a direct correlation to how we experience life, right? That's karma. And we can sort of steer things. We can't control everything, right? But we can kind of steer things by making wise choices and by learning about what the wise choices for us are, depending on our code, our lock to unlock and find, be the curious detective of. And then use the guidance from the rich wisdoms of traditions like yoga and other guidance systems, yeah? So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you got something out of this. You know all the things to do with the YouTube video, right? Like, you know that it helps us greatly if you give it a like, please and thank you. If you give it a comment, thank you kindly. If you can share it, so much thank you for sharing. And if you subscribe to the channel, and of course, if you really want to get, make sure you get the videos, then you subscribe with notifications. I appreciate your presence here, and I wish you so much joy. Thank you so